welcome to Educated Interview Series. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Chris Devonshire Ellis, who's the chairman of Shira and Associates FDI specialist firm running across 28 offices in Asia, and also a publisher in Asia Briefing. He's also a distinguished visiting professor of Higher School of Economics of St. Petersburg, Russia. So welcome to the interview series. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in Mongolia.
Yes. So please tell us a little bit about your own firm, Shira and Associates, and how it differentiates from other bigger names in the region.
Well, we started out as a very small practice, just myself and two girls from Sichuan who couldn't speak English back in 1992. So we had very humble beginnings, and although they couldn't speak English, I couldn't speak Chinese at the time, which sounds ridiculous, but after a year I could speak Chinese.
Wow,
So the firm grew over the years. That was in 1992, and has developed steadily. 25 years. We had our 25th anniversary last year, and we grew out of China and into Asia. And interestingly enough, although our China business is still very strong, our fastest growing practices are our non-China operations in countries such as Vietnam, Singapore, and India. So it's been a really interesting journey. We are an SME,
yes,
but we've become a multinational at the same time.
Exactly, so. I bet. Yeah, it was such an interesting journey. But could you explain a little more about the details of the business? How you help your clients? What exactly, in which areas?
We concentrate on foreign investors. So in China, we only deal with foreign customers coming to China, and the same in the other markets which we operate in. About 50% of our client base is from North America, about 35% is from the EU, and the balance is from everywhere else. We have clients from 90 different countries, and we'll assist them with their market, their pre-entry market research, their business intelligence, how to do business, the things they need to know to make a decision as to what they're going to do and how to do it in the particular countries. Then we'll get involved with the legal administration, the corporate setup, all the licenses and things that they need, the compliance issues that they have to go through, understanding the taxes that they have to pay, very important. So that's all the setup stage. After that, we'll help monitor them. So administrative systems such as bookkeeping, accounting. We have a very fast-growing payroll division. We also get involved with HR, compliance, these sorts of issues. So keeping them in compliance and happy and profitable.
Right, exactly. It's very important, right? Yeah. So since you started in China and you have most of your operations still based in China, and a lot of your clientele was coming for China, I would like to dig deeper into Chinese market actually, it really works well in the sense that your firm already has a little over 25 years of experience now. So I'd like to ask some of the main economic and social shifts you observed throughout this lifespan of your 25 years in China.
Well, when we first started in China, there was no internet.
That was back in
1992. In fact, I remember when the Zhangguo Hotel in downtown Beijing, when that had a fax machine, that was a big deal.
Wow.
All the businessmen went to use the Zhangguo Hotel's fax machine. There weren't many telephone lines in the country, and certainly not connecting internationally. So we've gone from a phase of very, very early development, from the era of the latter era of Deng Xiaoping, saying to open up, to get rich is glorious, all these sorts of things, right through the very productive era of Jiang Zemin and Zhu Rongji, then Hu Jintao, and now all the way through to the presidency of Xi Jinping, where now we have the internet, we have the e-commerce. So I think that the big thing that really happened is technology in China. That changed everything, and China is continuing to adapt even today, as is the rest of the world. So yeah, big changes.
Right. With coming the development of technology, people's way of living, their expectations, everyday expectations, lifestyle have also changed tremendously, I imagine.
Yeah, of course. And now we don't think anything about sending emails. When I started Dezan, Shira, we used to mail contracts or fax them. So huge changes. Things have become much easier, much faster, much more efficient and effective. That's made people more productive. It's helped with the flows of trade and commerce, basically the sharing of communication, not just in the social sphere, but also business communications have massively improved since we began.
I see. So you think your clients who are usually coming from North America and EU, as you said, find working with maybe Chinese businesses and Chinese professionals as effective, or as seemingly as working with their own professionals back at home? You would say.
There are still differences. There's some cultural differences, which I think will always be there, but they can be overcome with a little bit of humbleness and hard work and appreciation. I think advice for anyone being in China is, or any other foreign country, is to always remember you're a guest in that country, so behave accordingly. But
could you share maybe like 1-2 cultural nuances that Westerners should be, not only Westerners actually, any foreign visitor coming to China should be aware?
I think it's to have that element of humbleness, and I think that phrase, remember you're a guest in their country, if you keep that in the back of your mind, I think that you're unlikely to go wrong. Particularly in Asia, people don't like an arrogant approach. So I think that softer approach, that willingness to make friends or be cordial with people even before business is conducted is a good thing. I think sometimes in the West we can be too aggressive, too early, and that's off-putting to many Asians and can be seen as being rude, frankly. So I think that issue of remembering that you're always a guest is a good creed to hold.
I see, sure. That's actually very practical advice. Okay, so I would like to actually follow up a little more on my question on the economic and social shifts that happened in China over the past 25 years. Of course, there was technology advancements, and with that advancement and with the change in people's lifestyles, I imagine the kind of sectors that the economy is driven from have also changed. Maybe from your time, or was more heavily reliant on agriculture. From your
the early days in China were driven essentially by cheap Chinese labour. Manufacturing industry in particular. China has made a lot of policy decisions over the past 2.5 decades to steer the economy in the right way. So manufacturing industry, which is polluting or labour intensive, they started to use the tax regime to force those businesses out and change the Chinese economy to become more reliant on IT. And they've done that very, very successfully. Now China is innovative in IT products and services and will continue to be. So that change from being a manufacturing base, a phenomena which has largely now passed to India, to China being it's moved to China now being involved in more innovative and high-tech industries has actually been remarkably smooth. They've done very well.
Do you see any specific sectors in that innovative industry that will be leading the economic development of the country in the next 25 years?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball for 25 years, but I think that one thing that foreign investors have really missed is e-commerce in China. That structure is in place in China. There's over 600 million people in China that have access to e-commerce and are buying online today. The Communist Party of China has said that they want 1 billion by 2025, and that's a huge number. So I think one of the things which has not been so well understood, and the opportunities that have not been so well understood by foreign investors looking at China, is the fact that you can use Chinese e-commerce platforms to sell to the Chinese. Your products be wherever they are. And that means you can sell to Chinese without actually even having to come to China.
Right.
That's an extraordinary revelation and a revolution. And I think that e-commerce and the areas that support that are really going to be driving the Chinese economy. It's going digital.
Exactly.
That's a good thing.
That's a really good thing. Maybe some people, in my observation, take it as a so good thing that they just expect with this huge number of internet users and big middle class consumers in China, if they start selling something in China, it would immediately succeed. Do you agree with that?
No. The Chinese consumers have their own local market preferences, and of course they want to buy in using Chinese language. It's a native language. So foreign investors wanting to sell to the Chinese market have to tailor their products to be sold to the Chinese. That means putting them on Chinese portals. That means having descriptions of the product in Chinese. However, there's also been a large increase in the number of Chinese tourists travelling all over the world.
Exactly.
I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this broadcast will acknowledge that. What's interesting about those people is that they are the Chinese tourists of today, but they will be the consumers of tomorrow. They want to bring back memories or some of particularly the luxury goods, including food, consumables, fashion items, I think, are big from their travels. And I think, again, that a lot of people in Europe especially, and to some extent North America and Central Asia and Southeast Asia, have missed this. I think there's been much less an appreciation, but to sell to the Chinese, you don't just turn up and start to sell. You need to tailor that. And so I think that means that people wanting to sell to China that are not in China need to build a specialised China sales desk so that they can deal with the languages used. There's two types of characters, for example, in China. There's complex and simplex. Which one do you use? Where? There's two types of spoken Mandarin as well. So there are many different types of Mandarin dialects. So which ones do you use and where? These sorts of questions, and that requires a little bit of thought put into it, and which requires expertise. So yes, some energy does need to be put into it, but the knowledge is out there. It's easy to get, and most of it is available online for free. Research.
So any foreign investor or anyone who wants to operate in China, just do their homework. They have to do their homework well.
Do the homework. The information is out there, so there's no excuse really. Do the homework. Be diligent, read books, ask questions. There's plenty of organisations out there that can help. And then use that knowledge to tailor your own product or service to the Chinese market in a way which is going to give it the potential of having the highest potential for success.
Yeah, you mentioned about reading books. You have published several books, right? And one of them is, I remember you published a book on Shira's venture, how it was developed for its 15th anniversary. We're looking forward to the next book. But there's another book Silk wrote. What was the name? Silk Road?
Yeah, I wrote a book called China's New Economic Silk Road a couple of years ago, which has been a great success. It's available on Amazon. The book about my firm, which when we had our 15th anniversary, now we're 25, that was called The Story of a China Practice. It's available free. The other books I've written, which are technical guides to China and other countries such as India, they're available on Amazon, and they include everything from setting up liaison offices to China tax to all sorts of other different things. So if you look up my name, Chris Devonshire Ellis, on Amazon, you'll find all those books.
And those can be a great resource for I think anyone interested in expanding to China.
I hope so. There's a lot of China books. There's a lot of noise out there. I like to think that mine cut to the chase and give practical, sensible advice as well as technical advice. So if that's been my contribution, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. For the book, you just mentioned Silk Road, China's new economic policy, Silk Road Initiative. Because Silk Road Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative are some of the most trendy topics these days, especially in international trade and business. Most of it's still at the development stage, the negotiation, talk, and project development, etc. The reason why I asked about the next 25 years, the projection of China, is that what's happening, what are being discussed nowadays with these government officials at the government senior level will trickle down to the businesses in the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So with this initiative, Belt and Road, Silk Road, what are the main points you think the businesses should be aware of?
Well, China has done a tremendous job in the past 25 years in developing the infrastructure within its own country. It's now exporting that. And there are large parts of Central Asia and Southeast Asia, which frankly, and Eastern Europe, which frankly need a lot of investment in exactly the same thing, infrastructure. So that is being put in place, and the Chinese are going to continue to develop that. Global warming is having is a bad thing, but it is having an effect on parts of the coastline. So I think in 25 years we'll be seeing regular shipping from China through the northern sea passage to Europe, because it's quicker, faster, and more efficient than doing that by train. So the Arctic will open up, the better for worse, but it will happen. So the Chinese are going to put in the infrastructure. That provides two opportunities. It provides opportunities for China to sell products which are increasingly going to be high tech. The plastic buckets and Christmas trees, that will move to countries such as India and other Southeast Asian nations. They will also use that infrastructure to secure the resources that China needs. China is energy poor, it's agricultural poor, so that infrastructure will allow China's 1.3, 1.4 billion people to have things they need to live, which is a good thing. The other flip of the coin is that the other way is that that same infrastructure allows the countries along the Belt and Road routes to start to sell to China. And again, how to do that we discussed earlier. But that opportunity is very definitely there. And I think that one of the things that people miss is that as a one-party state, the Chinese Communist Party needs to keep its population happy, because if it doesn't, there's going to be trouble. One of the ways to keep Chinese population happy is to give them access to goods that they want to buy. And I think that an increasing trend over the next 25 years will be an increased purchase by Chinese of foreign goods. So foreign manufacturers of everything from fashion to foods to all sorts of things, and services to go with them, should be looking at the Chinese market and how to access that.
Yeah, I think Silk and Road, Belt and Road Initiative, as well as the Silk Road, New Silk Road Initiative, had been relatively very well received, especially by China's immediate and nearby neighbors. That's why there have been a lot of engagements to be part of these big initiatives. However, lately there have been some criticism about, China has been pushing too much with their initiatives, that some of the less affluent countries are now debt-driven. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the media has been rather partisan as regards the Belt and Road Initiative, and I think some of the reports that they've put out there have been incorrect. I'll give you an example. I happen to have a property in Sri Lanka and have done for several years. I'm lucky to spend my winters there. Sri Lanka is part of the maritime route in China's Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese built the Southern Expressway, which means that travelling from the airport at Colombo on the west, the coast, down to the south coast, which is where I live, and the beautiful beaches in the southeastern part of Sri Lanka, which is where the tourists want to go. That journey time has been reduced from what used to be a 6 to 7 hour drive down a very busy and frankly dangerous coastal road to just 2 to 2.5 hours down the express route. And the Chinese built that. They also built an airport at Hambantota in the southeast, which has not been fully utilised yet. That's due to local political rivalries rather than anything to do with China. There were issues with the Sri Lankans being able to pay for that. As a result of that, the Chinese have taken a 99-year lease on the property, and that has upset some people. So that's the perceptions are there in one way. However, what that airport and what that expressway have done is to give the regional economy and the Sri Lankan economy as a whole a real boost. If you look at the tourist numbers, the inbound foreign tourist numbers coming into Sri Lanka, they've increased by 500% in the last 7 years. And that would not have been possible without the Chinese investment there. So although you can say that the Chinese are building the infrastructure and it's unfair, I think that the real trick to understanding the Belt and Road is to look at how businesses, international businesses anywhere, can exploit the Belt and Road infrastructure. There's a difference between wanting to get involved with projects such as building bridges, ports, airports. The Chinese will take that business, but it has to be remembered these are one-off projects only. The infrastructure itself, the Chinese do their homework, will stay there, but using that infrastructure to build sustainable industries such as tourism, which has seen a construction boom in Sri Lanka, hotels are going up, everything that you need to build an hotel, the construction work, the woodwork, the fabrics, the textiles, the civil engineers, the architects, the interior designers, the landscape gardeners, the chefs that are required, the dive masters, all that kind of stuff. Yes. So what's happening is in Sri Lanka, an entire industry which is worth billions of dollars, far in excess of the amount it costs to build the airport, has been created and is continuing to grow. And I think that's the trick with the Belt and Road. It's exploiting the Chinese-built infrastructure, and that's what people should be concentrating on. That's where the opportunities lie.
And opportunities don't come just now, just tomorrow. It can come in months, in years of time, after years and months of hard work and consistently doing their homework well, right?
Yeah, there needs to be research done into the development impact and the opportunity impact of the infrastructure that the Chinese are building along the Belt and Road. That needs to be done. And I think that's a job for government departments to be able to do, to understand that and feed that knowledge to the private sector so that entrepreneurs and all the way from small businesses all the way up to multinational companies can take advantage of that knowledge. Who cares who built the airport? People don't, they just want a good airport. So I think that looking at exploiting the infrastructure, that's the trick to understanding and making money from what China is doing here as foreign investors.
And after all, there is no free meal, so everybody has to do their own work to be able to benefit from what's happening.
I'd like to paraphrase something that Deng Xiaoping once said. He said, "It doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat.
Yeah.
If it's a good cat, if it catches mice."
Yes.
And I think the same is true of airports and ports. It doesn't matter if the Chinese or anybody else built them. If it's a good port, if it's a good airport, if it's a good road, it's a good piece of infrastructure. So let's use that infrastructure to make money out of the associated industries and trade, tourism in some cases, but commercial development and passenger flows that they will create. Mm-hmm. That's the trick, that's the key.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a very good message that we can leave our viewers with, and thank you very much again for your very interesting talk.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.